All right, friends, I'm so excited for who you get to hear from today. I'm sitting here with my real life friends, Mac and Kenz. You guys, this is like the fourth time? I don't know. We've had you on Girls Night a lot, but it's because we could talk about a million things. We just spent the longest time talking and we're like, oh yeah, we should probably record. So anyway, I feel like we're mid Girls Night. Welcome everybody else. We're glad that you're here.
Yes.
Guys, welcome back to the show.
Oh, it's cozy here. I feel the cozy vibes because we're used to this. We know what this is like.
If you guys,
I love it.
Okay, if you guys talk about the encounter at Target, this podcast, I'm going.
Kenz, you're the one that brought it up, not us.
Yeah, we weren't going to bring it up.
We were going to talk about it.
Yeah, all the listeners need to know. Basically, Mac and Stephanie ran into each other at Target like on a Saturday night and fell in love. They were like, we're both here at Target. And that was their like moment of bonding. And they've talked about it every single episode, I think. So.
That is totally not what happened, I have to say.
Yeah,
it was that we ran into each other like several Saturday nights in a row. Like, yeah. It was just very clear that neither of us had plans and we were both at Target. And it happened enough times that it became embarrassing.
Yeah.
And then I feel like
funny.
we were like, yeah. And then we're like, okay, great, we're friends.
I'm just getting the vibe stuff that Kenz is jealous. She wishes that she had that bond with you stuff. And it's okay, Kenz. Y'all have a special bond too.
We can, I'll text you next time I'm going to Target and then we can meet there.
That's amazing.
Okay, we have jumped all the way in the deep end. You guys tell us who you are, what you do, and a fun fact about yourself.
Okay, yay. Okay, well, I'll introduce us together, kind of, sort of. So we're Mac and Kenz. We started a college women's ministry called Delight Ministries. This is like our fourth time on this podcast, so I'm sure you know what it is. And we also have a fun little content brand where we write Bible studies and also a podcast called For the Girl. And we've been best friends, Mac and I, since college, which has been about 10 years now. And so, yeah, I'm feeling like we're like in it for the long haul, for real, for real. So it's kind of amazing. Best friends are the best. Yes. And is this my time to say my fun fact?
It is, unless you need a minute.
Do you need a minute? Do you want me to go first?
All right, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
Okay. My fun fact is that I have a deep fear and disdain for paper napkins.
What?
Literally. And it's been my whole life long. And I literally, when I was a kid, I used to tell people I was allergic to napkins because I hated napkins so much. And I haven't grown out of it still to this day. Like, and especially now being married, Tyler is a napkin user and baller upper. And so they really grossed me out at that point. But he's actually gotten really sweet. He hides them from me. He like puts them under the table. He'll leave it in his hands and put it under the table so I don't have to see it, because I seriously cannot focus if there is a gross used paper napkin on the table. I can't handle it. It's the grossest thing to me ever.
Oh my. Okay, so what do you do at like, do you bring your own BYO cloth napkin?
Yeah. Well, you know, at nice restaurants, the cloth napkins don't bother me. Like, I like a cloth napkin, totally cool with a cloth napkin. I don't know, like, I just don't use napkins, which I know I still get dirty, but I guess I just wash my hands right now. I honestly don't know how I survive, but like, I will use a napkin and I will like blot my hand on it, like blot it. But the moment it gets like balled up and gross, that's when it grosses me out. So I'm just very gentle with my napkins, I guess.
No one is going to... I'm never going to look at a napkin the same.
Honestly, same.
Ever. So this is like not even my fun fact, but I have a friend who eats French fries and doesn't eat the ends of them.
Ew,
so she just like leaves. Yeah, she'll just like eat a French fry and then just like leave. Like it's almost like that's like the handle. No, she just will like, she's holding it in one hand. She'll like chew. And then when there's like the little ends left, she'll just like put it down. So when she's done with a plate of French fries, they're not gone. There's just like a bunch of ends.
But does she chew one end? Because don't you have to eat one of the ends?
Yeah.
Yes, to the other?
Have to eat. You sure do.
So bizarre.
I know.
I love it.
I know.
For some reason, I'm just so grossed out by that, and I do not know why.
Yeah, I don't know if that deserved an ew, kids.
No.
Yeah, in real, it's not. It doesn't. It's not gross, but it is just such a weird. Like, you're such a weirdo. What are you doing?
No,
Okay, all right,
that
Kenz.
feels gross. I love that you said it's like she uses it as the handle.
The handle,
That
the
just
cry
got
handle.
me. Okay. My fun fact, this is actually a great one and it's really true. I'm not exaggerating. I steam my face every single morning. I like boil a pot of water over the stove and I steam my face. Yeah.
Okay, well, and then after she's done steaming her face, she cooks her eggs in that water.
I boil eggs. Yeah.
So it's really weird. It's really weird. I thought you were going to leave that out. And I was like, you can't leave that out.
Well, I don't know. I was going to add that in, but well, I feel like that's not that weird to boil eggs every morning. That's why the fun fact was that I use it as like a face steamer as well.
Yeah.
So
I think that if you would have said them in reverse, it would have been fine. As it is, I'm grossed out because you were boiling eggs in your face water, and I get it. Like but if you said I steam my face in my egg water, I'd be like, that's fine. I don't know. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna give you an ew. I'm gonna give you an ew.
It's really awesome.
That is the most justifiable ew that we've heard thus far. Is Ken steaming her face in eggs?
Yeah.
There's really no reason for it. Like, I'm not like trying to have good skin. At this point, it's just like an addiction. It's so weird. I'm like, I can't wait every day to like steam my face. It's like cozy. It's like warms me up. It like feels fresh. Like when I don't like steam it, my pores aren't opened. I feel like I'm like just like keeping the germs on my face. Like it's really weird. It's like my face needs it now. Yeah, you should try it. Everybody should try it.
Yeah, I get the face steaming thing I'm into. It's the eggs afterwards
You're
that really
the
get me. I am. Okay, while we're doing this, and then I swear, you guys, we are going to move on.
Okay.
My gross thing that I can't handle is like in full force right now because as we're talking, so this is going to come out like right after we recorded it.
Okay.
It's almost Halloween, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there are pumpkins everywhere, which means there's like gourds everywhere, which means there's like the bumpy, like misshapen, like things growing on it, gourds. And I have a thing, and my dad has it too. So I feel like not alone in things that grew in like weird things that have things growing on them.
Yeah.
Just really gets me. And so like people seem fine with like different
the warts
like
on the pumpkins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't.
Mac just put some wart pumpkins on her front porch.
They're not wart pumpkins, but while we were buying the pumpkins, because we were buying the like heirloom, is that what they're called? Heirloom pumpkins or whatever, the like weird ones. But
no one knows.
While we were shopping, they had the ones that had the nasty bumps on them. And I was like, ew, gross. But I mean, like, it's really not that gross when you think about it, but it is gross just looking at it.
I know. I don't know. It's like, it's pretty all encompassing. Anything that's like that, where it's like something's growing on something else. I'm just like, can't.
Sometimes my sweet potatoes like get those like long, like,
Well, that's like
long
rotten.
straw.
That's not good.
Are they? I honestly never have known like what's happening.
That means that you're getting
potato.
old and it's like growing weird stuff on it.
Yeah, like I'll like go
gosh.
into my like fruit bowl and I'll be like, whoa, this is like a foot long.
No, that is my actual. Okay, we have to move on. We have to move on. Okay,
yeah.
So you guys just had you guys just had 2 new books come out.
Yes,
we did.
That is wild. Tell us about them. Tell us like the backstory of them. I can't wait to hear about this.
Yes. Okay, so we have a Bible study that just came out and it's called In My Feels, How to Feel God When You're Not Feeling It. And it explores 8 core emotions that we all feel and what happens when we dwell in those feelings or we suppress those feelings or we just kind of ignore that those feelings are happening in our lives. They often turn sour and morph into often the negative sides of feelings that we often can identify with. And then also we explore the invitation that Jesus offers us in every feeling, because feelings as created by God are actually almost pathways for us to experience him more intimately. And so that's in my feels. It dives into those 8 core feelings. You're digging into scripture, really exploring like what God has to say about each of those feelings. And then to go with it, we have a devotional called For When I'm in My Feels. That is a 40-day prayer and reflection journal and kind of like just meditation place where you can really begin to press into those feelings. So every day the devotional is like for when I'm feeling anxious, for when I'm feeling rejected, from when I'm feeling disappointed, all of these different like spectrum of emotions that we often feel. And there's scripture and just a place for you to process that with Jesus. And so it's been really cool, this whole journey. So we were just telling you stuff beforehand, but when we were in college, we started this Bible study. And originally, we went to a Lifeway bookstore to look for a Bible study to use in this Bible study that we were starting. And we looked everywhere, and there were a ton of Bible studies for like college or for high school girls and middle school girls. There's a ton for moms, all the Beth Moore studies out there. But there just wasn't a lot for the kind of that in-between age, that age where maybe girls were in college or recently out of college. And gosh, just what you're going through in that time is so different than what a mom is experiencing and what a high school girl is experiencing. And so we ended up just kind of picking something random and then kind of spent the next 10 years essentially like creating space for that in-between generation and that in-between age. And then about a year ago, Lifeway, that bookstore that we went into, they also have a publishing arm. They reached out to us about writing a Bible study for that generation. And so we got to write the very study that we were looking for 10 years before. And it's been super cool. And kind of through that whole journey, just this idea that college women, young adult women, one of the things that I think we're most kind of stuck in is often our feelings. Like we're way better at processing our feelings probably than our parents' generations who were a little bit more like you ignore feelings. You don't let them like tell you anything about your life. And then kind of like a pendulum, our generation switched to being really controlled by our feelings. And we're much more familiar with a lot of great things, vulnerability. We're comfortable with therapy. We know about words like anxiety and depression. But oftentimes we then allow our feelings to tell us more about who we are than who God says we are. And so this study is really about kind of finding that middle ground of not getting stuck in your feelings, not letting your feelings tell you who you are, but also not ignoring them. And also learning how to value your feelings because they're telling you something really important about what's going on inside of you and how you can actually use every single one of your feelings to step into deeper intimacy, deeper connection with God and with the people around you. So it's been really fun kind of just like going on this journey of getting in our feels.
I love that. I love hearing too the story of how it came about in the 10 years when I first started blogging. So it was like at this point, I think it was maybe 10 years ago or maybe 11 years ago. I heard someone speak about starting anything. If you want to start and grow a thing or become a blank. So I think I heard someone ask him like, how long does it take to get where you want to go or to make it or whatever? And the guy said, give it 10 years. And that was so discouraging to like everyone in the audience. They're like, 10 years? That is so like, if you say, I want to start a podcast, how long until it becomes a thing? Whatever that means. If someone said like, give it 10 years, you're like, I'm so discouraged. That sounds like forever. But I loved that advice because it just gave me, it like reframed, I don't know, it just reframed what the process looks like of building anything that's good. And so I love women getting to hear that like, you guys didn't like pop up on Instagram like, yesterday or like, and then, publish a book. It's a really long process, but it's so good. And you guys know so much more today than you did 10 years ago. And you have so many, like, you guys get to share all the things you've learned over the 10 years. And I think that there's the kind of this idea that, that idea of overnight success, and so I love women getting to hear that 10-year cycle. That's just really beautiful.
Yeah, it's so cool. It was actually really funny. We just celebrated, we did like a 10-year birthday party for Delight at our last little conference event thing. And we had like photo shoot outside and it was like a disco theme. I had little disco glasses on. It was hilarious. But I was telling everybody, I was like going around the room, like being weird, I guess. And I was like, guys, guess how old you were when we started Delight? And like, this is college age girls. So they're like in their, I guess, 20, 21, 22 or whatever. And it was 10 years. So I was like, you were 11 years old when I started Delight, or you were 12 years old. And honestly, it was just fun for me to get the shock factor because they like had never put themselves in those shoes. But I love the conversation too, because I just don't think that it's always noticed too. Like, and even for Mac and I, like people don't know that. Like people don't notice that, know all the work that went into it. It's kind of something that you just almost endure alone. But the sad thing is that people do just see it and they just think it happened right away. I mean, hopefully we look young enough and they're like, oh my gosh, they've probably been doing this for like 2 years. Like crazy. That like happened right away for them. And it's just so not true. So to be able to share the story in the process is like actually really fun. And like, I like enlightening people with that because it does take hard work and like a lot of obedience and a lot of sacrifice over a lot of years. But I also say that's like been some of the best parts. Like it's been so much fun. Like the in-between part and the like working really hard and the behind the scenes when no one saw it and stuff. Like that was like so fun. Some of the most like hilarious moments because we messed up so much and we still do. But I mean, back then it was just like crash and burn moments that like you honestly just laugh so hard at. And like, it's just fun. And the journey has been such a joy and built so much intimacy with Jesus too. So yeah.
I love that. I
was going to say, I think what's so cool is in the 10 years, God has done so much work on my heart. Like if something cool like this would have happened year 2, year 3, I think I would have taken myself way more seriously. Like, I think I would have been like, wow, I'm really cool and I'm a big deal. And like, I think I would have tried to prove that I was worthy of that kind of honor or worthy of that. And there was something in the journey of 10 years where I felt like God really loosened my identity to all of these things to where like, yeah, this is such a fun and cool thing. And I love it. And the 10-year ago me would have been blown away that this happened. But the 5-year ago me would have been probably too into it or probably scared out of her mind that someone was going to find out that she was a phony or something like that. And so I think there's something really beautiful to what God does while you wait, how he loosens kind of the grip you have on it and how he really makes it not about you. And I think now I'm so excited about all the girls who are going to encounter Jesus through it and experience Jesus through it. And to be honest, it's way less exciting that people are going to know my name. You know, it's just like it's a really cool thing that God does on the journey and in process that like, I think if you get the dream too soon, that your heart's almost not ready for that. And your heart will twist it and distort it into other things that like are not necessary for what God might want to do through that thing. And so I think that's just been fun for me as I'm so thankful that it took 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard someone, I love that. I remember having a conversation about like the idea of, going viral or getting discovered or, for whatever like, realm you're working in. And this was a really long time ago. And we talked about like, what happens if something that you make like gets really big, really fast? Like that's our hope, that's always for all of us. We're like, I'm going to, make this thing and everyone's going to find out about it and it's going to get really big. But like, it would be really scary to be standing on a stage that was too high, too fast. Like there's something really like to have your first interview be with Oprah. like, yikes. You want to like practice a little first. You want to try it out. You don't want to have your first go be on such a big stage. And so there is something so important to the practice and the small steps forward. And I heard someone say that success is a long, slow walk in the same direction. And like it is, and you're so much more ready for the next thing because you went through the previous thing. It's walking through that gets you ready, that teaches you, like, that's how God prepares you and teaches you what you need to know. And I think it's just really discouraging when you're doing something new and it feels like it's not growing as fast as someone else's thing, to know that like it really does take a long time for almost everybody. And I think it's like there are a lot of challenges to having something grow too quickly that you don't encounter when you get to go a little bit slower, like you were talking about, Mac. So anyway, I feel like there's just maybe someone who needs that encouragement. Yeah. But for everyone else, we'll totally get back to the Bible study because that's what we're talking about. Okay, so there's so many questions I want to ask about this, about feelings. I know that you guys identified 8 core feelings. Talk to me about those.
Yeah. Okay, so the 8 core emotions, it was really fun. We read this book from Chip Dodd. It's called Voice of the Heart. And have you read it before?
No, but one of my counselors talked about it like a ton. So I'm familiar.
Yeah. So exactly. It's a common, Chip, he wrote this book and he's also, I believe he's a therapist and counselor. And then his practice or model has been also used by therapists and counselors nationally. And so, we took that same model that we find in therapy. It's like, if you even Google it, you can find this little chart. It's like the 8 core emotions, and then how they can like grow what we're calling sour. I'm not sure what they're calling it, and then how they can be healthy as well. And this same chart, my mother-in-law, she's actually a therapist, and she says she has this chart in her office and just sits on the wall because as you're talking with patients, or for us, which this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this book, is that it's a great just discipleship tool. It gives you the language. Like when I sit across the table, just like at coffee with a friend or with somebody I'm discipling, and she's talking about maybe resentment that she's had in her life. And typically I wouldn't have known the language. I would just be listening to her like, oh, dang, that's tough. Oh, shoot. Okay, let's dig in a little bit more. But what we see through these 8 core emotions is one of the core emotions is hurt. So feeling really hurt. And the sour side of hurt is resentment. So it might show its colors, like she's really angry or resentful, but the root of it is her hurt. And so knowing and being able to see these things and knowing the core emotions is just an easy way to give you language and direction in navigating your feelings. So it wasn't invented by us. It was taken from the rest of the world.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because of the 8 core emotions, we would probably all identify 7 of them as negative emotions. So those would be things like hurt, loneliness, fear, shame, guilt, sadness, anger, and then the last one is joy. And of those 8, we'd all say, oh my goodness, why are there 7 negative and only 1 positive? But the truth is that every single one of these emotions in itself, our culture has identified as negative, but there's actually something really beautiful in feeling that emotion. But often what we know is that distorted side of the feeling, the sour side of the feeling, when hurt turns into resentment, where on the flip side of what Kenz is saying, the invitation in hurt is healing. So it's only through admitting our hurt that we can walk towards healing. And so there's actually something really valuable in feeling the feeling of hurt and identifying that and saying, hey, I'm hurting. Because when you're hurting, that is the first step towards healing. And so it's just been a really interesting thing for me as a girl who's like, Kenz and I always talk about the difference in feelers and stuffers. So like probably half of the population are people who just like feel their emotions and can't help but be overcome by tears and love sad movies and things like that. And then there's maybe the other half who are like, feelings, bad. I must stay away from them. I must not feel them. And I'm definitely a stuffer. Like I stuff my feelings. I ignore them until they come, exploding out of me. But I often don't want to admit that I'm feeling any of these feelings. And so for me, it's just been a really beautiful thing to say, hey, I'm feeling hurt. And that's not something I need to be ashamed of. That's not something I need to run from or like tie up in a bow or deal with on my own. Like there's something really beautiful in just saying, I feel hurt. And as soon as I admit that, God can speak so much into that. And so, even just like, I don't know, I just feel like a new woman, honestly, being like, yes, feelings, they're so good and they're so powerful if we're willing to identify, admit them, and then take those to the feet of Jesus.
Mhm.
I love that. What so tell me again what this is. I feel like this is going to be hard, so we'll have to just link to the chart. But tell me again what the 8 are, and then is on one side it's what, like how you guys said, like if they turn sour, and then what the invitation is.
Yeah. You want to
Can
do
you
all
go
8?
through? Yeah, do all 8 and tell me, like, this one, and then the sour side is this, the invitation is this, just so we can kind of get a
Perfect.
picture.
Okay, yes, we can kind of go back and forth on this. Okay, so the first core emotion is hurt. The sour side of hurt is resentment. And then the invitation is healing.
Okay.
So it's hurt. Okay, we have loneliness. So lonely is the core emotion. I feel like this is probably one I resonated the most with writing this study. The sour side is apathy, like feeling really apathetic about your state of loneliness. And then the invitation is intimacy, which makes so much sense.
Yeah. Okay.
So good. Okay, wait, I don't have my book in front of me.
Oh, I can run through them. Okay, then there's sadness.
She gets
Sadness
going.
is one of the core emotions. And the sour side is self-pity. And then the invitation is embrace. Like embracing the Lord and faith. Then the next one is anger. Feeling really angry. When we wrote this chapter, I was like, oh, Mac, this one's for you. This one is your chapter. But the sour side is bitterness. And then the invitation is passion, showing like, just like you're passionate about something, but it might look as if it's anger. And then fear is another core emotion. The sour side is really prevalent in our generation, and that's anxiety, just feeling really anxious, trying to control our life, which we really can't control. But really the core of that is fear. And then the invitation is faith, believing that God's going to pull through for you. And that does seem like surface level and cheesy in a way, but if you dig in, there's so much there. Then there's shame. This is another core emotion, shame. The sour side is self-rejection. And then the invitation is humility. That was pretty eye-opening for me. I was like, there's no way shame can be actually a good emotion, but I really do think that it builds so much humility inside of us if we put on new lens for it. And then there's the next one is guilt. The sour side is pride. That's real. I've experienced that in my life. And then the invitation is freedom. And then the last one is the positive one, or at least we see it as positive, and that's joy. And then the sour side, though, of joy can be cheap pleasure, just grabbing on to things that are quick fixes. And then the invitation is full life. The study, as we dug into the word and looked at Jesus's life and how he experienced joy, was like so powerful. I was like so hype about it. So it's like the end of the study, and it's amazing.
I love that. I love that. So,
Yeah.
okay, talk me through, like, I know you guys have learned so much in writing this. Talk to me about like the life cycle of an emotion. So like something happens, you feel something, and then is it that you get like a choice between these things, or like, I guess talk me through like, does that make sense? The life cycle of an emotion? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think in any feeling, we're kind of what we talked about before is like we probably all have our natural tendency to either like feel the feeling maybe almost too much, whereas it can almost tell us who we are. Like we let the feeling control us, Or maybe your tendency is to stuff the feeling and to say, nope, I'm not feeling that feeling. And I'm actually going to run away from that feeling. And so I think number one, it's really important to recognize where you are on that spectrum, and to know like, what is your tendency when a feeling kind of pops up in you? Because throughout your day, you are feeling a myriad of feelings and emotions. And it's almost like just paying attention to your feelings is step one and being like, what am I feeling? And so the very first thing I think is just like naming what you're feeling and naming it in the simplest of terms. Because oftentimes the feelings that we know are just distorted versions of other feelings. So, for example, anxiety is a distorted version of fear. So, anxiety is rooted in some sort of fear that you're feeling, fear of the unknown, fear of rejection, fear of disappointment, fear of so many things. And so it's kind of like getting back to like, okay, not just like, what am I feeling and what is like culture called that feeling, but what am I really, really feeling here? What am I really afraid of? So naming the feeling, I think, is number one, because if you don't name the feeling and if you don't kind of recognize the feeling, that's often when it turns sour. It's when we choose to kind of like do what we're most likely to do, which for me is stuff it. So when I ignore it and go, I'm not actually afraid of anything. Like, I'm not afraid. Like, let me muster up my own courage and strength to get over this. That for me is when that feeling can churn and distort into the sour side, which is going to be anxiety. Because the truth is, I'm afraid of something. Like, I'm afraid of maybe like disappointing somebody. And by me kind of like trying to take the control on my own, take control of something that I cannot actually have control of, I'm still allowing myself to kind of spiral into this thing called anxiety that we all know super well. And so really the choice is in that feeling is number one, are you going to recognize it? Are you going to say what it is? You're going to call it out for what it is. And then are you going to feel that with Jesus? I think that is the core here is that like, think about it. God created feelings. Like feelings are not out of his construct of creation. Like they were a part of how we were created, a part of our DNA. And I believe that everything created by God was created for him, created for us to be almost these like signposts for us to recognize him, for us to turn to him and go towards him. And so my recognition of my fear, I can either try to deal with my fear on my own, by my own principles and my own mechanism, and that's when it turns sour, or I can go to the feet of Jesus and say, Jesus, I'm feeling afraid, and I can let God speak into that feeling, and I can let God help me process through that feeling. And that's often when we step into the invitation in every feeling. So for fear, the invitation is faith. So like, true faith only happens in the face of real fear. You cannot have the beauty and the gift of faith without the realness of fear being there. And so when I go to Jesus and I feel my fear with him and I let him speak into my fear, I'm actually getting this incredible gift to step into what it really means to have true faith and to walk out my faith and to work out my faith and to let God, the one who is in control, be who he says he is and to show me what that looks like. And so I think that's really the choice we all have is, are you going to deal with your feelings by your own mechanisms and like spiral into all these other things? Or when you feel that feeling, are you going to go, hey, I need to go feel this and I need to go process this at the feet of Jesus and let him speak into this and step into this beautiful, deeper invitation that he might want to offer me in this feeling that I'm so used to dealing with on my own.
That's so good. That is so good. I love that. Talk to me. Have you guys, I mean, I know that you guys have had to reflect on this a lot over the course of writing this book, but just as we're kind of wrapping our minds around this, around the like, you feel something happens and you feel something and you have, a buffet of options of what you can do with that thing. Actually, this is something that I've like kind of been doing over the years that I think I'm hopefully getting better at. But like there have been times where I'll feel something like all of a sudden I'm feeling like sad or like it's like my heart feels heavy. And I'm like, what happened? Like, how did I get to this place? And I'll have to like go back through my thoughts. Like, what was I thinking about? I mean, I'm grocery shopping or something. I'm like, what was I thinking about? What sparked this? And then it's like 4 trains of thought back. I realized something, or I saw something, or like, you're scrolling through Instagram and you're not paying attention to, or like all of a sudden you're feeling sad and you're like, what did I see that made me sad? And you're like, oh, so-and-so had an event and I wasn't there. I guess I'm feeling left out, but I didn't even realize it. I just was just kind of sort of inexplicably feeling sad. And it just takes some intentionality. It takes a minute to like grab onto the rope and like trace your way back to the beginning of it. But if you don't do that, then you just are sort of run by this like sad feeling that, maybe you end up being grumpy with the people around you, or, it comes out in some way or another. But yeah, if you can trace it back, you can be like, okay, well, why am I feeling like this in the first place? And then you get to decide what to do about it. I know that you guys have thought about this a ton in your own life. Can you guys give me some examples, or like just an example that stands out of a time that you felt this way? And maybe you like did the right thing, or maybe you did the wrong thing, or maybe you did one then the other or something. I would just love a couple more examples of this.
Yeah, I feel like we could probably give a lot. One thing that I think about right away is just me and Mac's friendship and relationship. We've been best friends forever, have made a lot of big decisions together, run this business together. And there's been a lot of times where I have maybe been hurt by Mac. Like Mac said something to me and this is vice versa. I am not like putting Mac down right now, but like I'm trying to think of even a specific moment. Like I'm late all the time. And maybe one time I get onto the call and she's like, what? Why would you be late? She just lashes out at me or whatever it is. And then I might go back to Josh, my husband, at the dinner table. And I'm like, hey, like today, Mac yelled at me about being late and now I don't like her and I feel really hurt by her. And I just maybe rattle off like a ton of what sounds like resentment. Actually, I didn't even say I was hurt by her. I didn't say that at all. I probably with Josh was like, I really don't like Mac today, or she's just a grumpy old woman, or I don't think I ever want to work with her again. I'm saying like all these ugly things maybe. And really though, I'm hurt and by Mac. And if I was to go into a conversation with her, and hopefully I'd get there the next day where I'm like, hey, Mac, let's have a quick talk. Like instead of me just functioning out of resentment towards you, I want to just have a heart to heart. Like a heart to heart goes so far. Like I've felt a little bit hurt by you. And yeah, I know I was late, but you could have said it kinder, or whatever the conversation might be. And going back to the root of the issue instead of letting the resentment fuel our relationship. And gosh, there's been so many times where we've gone way too long without a heart to heart, like where maybe like something happened worse than being late and we just let it go on for a month without like addressing the root issue, but just functioning out of like bitterness and functioning out of like dislike for each other. And yeah, so I love like for us and our friendship, these conversations have gone so far where we can like really, and that's what the invitation is through her is healing, choosing to step into that healing and have that hard conversation that mends things again. And to do that, not alone, but with the Lord too. And yeah, so anyways, that's one that comes to my mind.
It's crazy because like, if you don't do that, if you don't have that conversation, or if you just like if you just like feel the hurt and like either shove it down or like fan the flames of it and let it turn into resentment, like it really can steal such real things from you. Like how many friendships have ended because of something like that? And it's like, someone's hurt and so they respond poorly in the next conversation. Well, then the other person's hurt by that. And then it just kind of becomes this like compound effect of misunderstanding until like, or maybe like the next day, Kenz, you're kind of short with Mac because you're mad at her and Mac is like, well, I guess Kenz doesn't like me anymore or something like that. I mean, it really can, like very real, important things can be lost pretty quickly because of unrecognized and undealt with, I guess. That's not really a term, but emotions. Yeah, feelings.
Yeah.
Our
Mac, what about
emotions
you?
have so much weight. It's like so real. I was just talking to a friend the other day that his wife got in like a bad car accident and was in the hospital. And he said that while she was in the hospital, she went to buy groceries, or he went to buy groceries. And he said he got in the grocery aisle, the grocery store, and literally like was lost in the grocery store. Like he just like couldn't find his way, or like couldn't find anything or do anything while she was in the hospital. And it was like, he was like, all right, why am I even trying to like move forward right now? Why am I like trying to be productive? Why am I trying to like get my to-do list done when things just feel so heavy? And so to what you were saying earlier, Steph, like that's an extreme version, but like it's true that sometimes our feelings and our emotions, when they're undealt with, like we are going to feel like lost, and we're not going to think straight. We're not going to make smart decisions. And so I think it really is important to pause, like to not be so hard on yourself, to like just keep pushing through your day to day, but to be like, okay, where is this coming from? And usually on a smaller level, like you really can address those things, even just in a moment of prayer with the Lord, and or in a conversation, like even just having one friend that you can call that's like your go-to friend that's like, hey, I don't really want to like podcast today, Mac, because I feel like super sad. Like I just feel really sad today. And like, if I'm going to keep doing this, it's just not going to be like, it's not going to work. It's not going to make sense. It's not going to be purpose filled. Like, and just like not doing it and choosing that, but having that one person you can call.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's just, our feelings have so much power. And when he told me that story, I was like, whoa, that's like so real. I feel that on a really small level, but
Yeah. Mac, what about you?
Yeah, I think one that I feel like we're kind of facing in my day-to-day life right now that's so real that I'm kind of on the flip side of it is like I'm receiving an emotion that somebody else is feeling. And so my husband, we've been married for like 5 months now, but he moved from Cincinnati to North Carolina, which is where I live. And so there's a lot of sadness that comes with moving. He's lived in Cincinnati his whole life long and picked up everything, left his family, left his friends, left his job, literally left everything to move and to join my life. And although that came with so much joy and so much good, it also came with a lot of sadness. And I think we having to walk through that together has been really hard and really difficult, because when I see him feel sad, I'm like, I need to stop. I need to help him get unsad. You know, I'm like, I need to help him get unsad. What can I do like to make him happy again and all these things? And the kind of the sour side of sadness is self-pity. And I know for me, like when I'm sad, self-pity is like so easy to jump into, where I'm just like, I mean, poor me, like I have it worse and blah, blah, blah. And so I think sometimes like I put him in that box, like where I'm like, even like I feel the sadness and I'm like, I feel sad for him. And then I'm like, oh, but like poor me, because I have to kind of like deal with your sadness. Like, you know, and I spiral into it, even though I'm not the one feeling sad initially. And so we've kind of had to like walk through this craziness together. But what I love is the invitation in sadness is embrace. And the idea of embrace is that you're embracing that, like, you lost something that had a lot of value, that really mattered. And so when you embrace something, you're actually celebrating the fact that something was really valuable in your life. And something was so valuable that you are giving yourself permission to be sad at not having it anymore. And I love that embrace, there's kind of two steps to that. Number one, I think when we choose to embrace, we're saying, hey, God, like, I'm going to let you embrace me in this. Like, I'm going to let you be the one that holds me in this pain and in this sadness that I'm feeling. And then number two, I think that God then equips us to be able to kind of embrace whatever it is that we're left with on the other side of that sadness, and to kind of go, okay, God, I'm kind of looking around at the rubble of what's left of this kind of like earthquake that happened in my life. But like, how can I begin to pick up the pieces and to build something out of what's left behind here? And so I don't know, that's just one thing that I, as someone who's like walking in, day out with someone who's experiencing sadness of losing something that really mattered, for me to know that the best thing I can do for him is not to let him sit in self-pity, and definitely not to self-pity myself, but for us to together embrace the beauty of what it is that he had to leave behind to come here. And for me to celebrate that with him and to remind him every day, and for me to remember that those things mattered so much, those things had value. And together, we can process through sadness by both of us embracing that and recognizing the beauty and the value and celebrating what it is that he's had to say no to be able to say yes to this. And so I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just kind of a real one that I feel like my husband and I are in right now.
You guys, I mean, I know we talked about this, probably especially when we first met each other, but I can relate to that so fully. I mean, neither Carl or I are from Nashville, but we moved here right when we got married, and the loneliness was absolutely crushing in the first year that we were married. And not because of him, he's amazing. And I feel like our first year of marriage was really good too. But I just didn't have any friends. And it is so, moving is so hard. And maybe it's not always hard. Maybe it's not hard for everybody, but I can relate to that sadness really seriously. And also, it's really hard when people close to you are feeling strong emotions, because we can interpret them in different ways and we can take them on. That's a conversation that happens a lot in our house of why are you cranky? Well, I'm cranky because you were cranky. Okay, well, that is not helping the situation at all. So yeah, everything that you said is so real. What have you guys learned? The thing that's hard about our emotions or our feelings is that they are really consuming. I think they just are kind of this wave that crashes down on you. Have you guys come across any tips or techniques or anything to I don't know, help in that moment when it crashes over you, so that we don't respond poorly or respond the way that we don't want to, or so we don't get caught up in our feelings that we take them to a sour place?
That's good. I definitely feel like it's different for every person, and kind of knowing yourself and the wave of your emotions is so important. But I think we've kind of named a couple even through our conversation. The first one is just identifying what you're feeling, and maybe even knowing and memorizing these core emotions. This isn't just from our study, but through everybody. These core emotions are really real. And if you can actually name it and point a finger to it, I think that brings a ton of clarity, first of all.
Yeah.
I really do believe that there's moments of prayer. I mean, there are mornings where I wake up and I'm okay, I for sure, I'm going to have quiet time because I'm in the middle of my study and I want to keep it up. But then there's other moments where I'm I really don't want to walk out the door because I feel something heavy or some anxiety or some anger. And I'm I need to just write this down. I need to pause, not only talk it out, but listen and hear from God. And it sounds really just maybe spiritual, but there's so much beauty there. And it's really, those moments are super, super powerful. And like I said too, even talking about it with a friend, sometimes I'm hey, I can't just pretend this is okay. And it doesn't mean that you have to tell everybody. But one person, and you have your husband too, but maybe even outside of that, girlfriend or something, where you can be hey, this is actually how I'm feeling. And I'm not just gonna sugarcoat this of how I'm feeling. I'm gonna tell you exactly how I'm feeling. I'm not gonna hide this. And even when it feels really embarrassing, I had the most embarrassing, weird thought the other day that I told Mac, and it felt good to just get it off my chest. I could not talk about it on this podcast, Mac. I know she's thinking to herself, what was it?
I'm but I think you tell me frequently weird things you think.
That is so me. That's friendship.
It was through that conversation that it got off of my chest and gave me a lot of clarity too. So anyways,
that's good. Yeah. I was going to add too, I think one thing that's been super powerful for both of us and that's just been really cool is I would say read through the Gospels through the lens of feelings and emotions, because they're there way more than you've probably ever let yourself realize or seen before. And just this idea that Jesus, although he was fully God, he was also fully human, which means he felt and experienced and walked through the just day-to-day feelings and emotions that we feel all the time too. I mean, like Jesus felt angry, Jesus felt hurt, Jesus felt sad. Jesus felt so many of these things that we feel. And it's super beautiful to watch how he processes and walks through feelings and emotions. And that's so much of what the Bible study is about is like, hey, let's look at Jesus, the guy who really does, the guy who's able to walk on this earth, feeling the feelings that we felt, but who was able to do it without sin, who was able to do it without harm. And I think there's just so much to be gained and so much to be learned by studying scripture and looking at how Jesus responds to feelings and emotions, because I think that same invitation is just available for all of us to respond in the way that he responded, and not to villainize our feelings, but to embrace our feelings and realize that they're telling us something really important that matters. And I think like what we said of just recognizing that your feeling is the language of your heart. That's what Chip Dodd says, the guy that we love. He says, the feelings are the voices of your heart that tell you what's going on inside. So they're really important and we have to pay attention to them. And we have to be able to take them to the best place to process, which is at the feet of Jesus. And I believe when we process things at the feet of Jesus, it doesn't stop there. It's not like the fix all band-aid where you're like, great, I took this to Jesus and I'm better. It's like, no, Jesus then equips you and sends you into relationships with the people around you for you to even deeper process that, for you to heal in even deeper ways, for you to embrace things in even deeper ways. And so I believe it starts with Jesus. And then I believe Jesus he's a sending God that then sends us back into the world, back into relationships to continue the renewal that he began in our hearts. And so, yeah, I'd say just like studying scripture to add on to what Ken said, and then literally realize your feelings aren't the problem, and realize where you can take them in the moment.
I love that, we do have complicated feelings about our feelings, we all do. And that honestly might be one of the hardest parts of them is like that's one of the reasons that I love this podcast so much and love conversations with friends so much is because so often we feel something and then we feel embarrassed or shame about feeling that thing, or like we're going through something and it feels hard, but we're like, that's so dumb that's hard. It shouldn't be hard. Like, you're weak or lazy or whatever for it, or not good enough because this is hard for you. And like, then that feeling of shame is usually worse than whatever the hard thing was in the beginning, And so when we can have people in it with us to help us like sort through some of those things and help us be a voice of kindness and grace for ourselves. Because we often talk to ourselves in ways we would never talk to anybody else. And so having someone come alongside you and say like, hey, the fact that you're going through this is normal and valid. And the fact that you feel this way is okay. And you didn't mess up and that's not why you are feeling this way, like you're okay. And then also to know that we're not alone in what we're feeling just takes off that extra layer of like shame or embarrassment or judgment of ourselves for going through this thing. And then we can just go through the thing. And yeah, I think the feelings we have about our feelings are one of the hardest parts. And so I love the idea of not being afraid of them and not villainizing them, but looking at them not as the end all be all truth about who we are. I remember my friend Carly told me probably 12 years ago, she was like, Steph, your feelings aren't always true, right? And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? I'm still unpacking that I can feel something and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not like I can feel rejected by somebody, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they've rejected me. There's just so much to it. But I think seeing our feelings as something that's helpful and good and the language of our hearts and something that can draw us closer to each other and closer to God, it's so good.
Yeah.
Do you guys have just kind of as we're finishing up, just one last like bit of encouragement for women, or something that you learned through writing this where you're like, everyone needs to know this thing?
Yeah. I would say that I really believe that your feelings are to be embraced in community. Like, I really believe that there is such a safe place to work through feelings and emotions. And I love that you shared that, Steph, of just like, I don't know, I think like so often we think we need to keep our feelings hidden. And what we're really trying to do with this study is it was written as a Bible study really intentionally. And it's like, every week in the Bible study, there is a group guide very intentionally because I believe like you can do so much work on your own and your feelings and you can do so much work at the feet of Jesus. But I believe we see the fullness of God's heart for our feelings and emotions when we process them in the context of community and when we realize like, oh, that loneliness you're feeling, even though you have 40 bazillion friends, like you feel that too? Like, that's not just me. Like, that's not just me who feels alone in a crowded room. And there's something really beautiful to be learned from other people. The things that God is teaching other people about their feelings and their emotions can really be the thing that like sets you free from that feeling or emotion controlling you and numbing you out to like other amazing feelings and emotions. And so I would just say, like, if this is speaking to you at all, like, get a group of gals together, a group of gals. I can't believe I said that. Get a group of girls, girlfriends, whatever, together and like be like, guys, let's sit down and like, let's like really get real and raw about our feelings. And let's not just get real and raw so that we can have like a, pity party cry circle. Like, let's get real and raw so that we can allow God to speak truth back into our feelings again. And we can keep each other accountable to not let our feelings be the things that define us and give us identity, but we can allow our God to be the things that defines us and gives us identity. And I just think that I love that so many of us work through emotions and feelings with people who are really smart and really wise in therapy and places like that. But I also believe that there's something really valuable to be shared in making your community a safe place to be real and raw about your feelings and emotions. And like Ken said, like, I cannot tell you how many things I've told Kenz over the years that I would feel so embarrassed or ashamed to tell other friends from my past. But Kenz and I have been able to kind of establish a relationship where I can be like, hey, today I am just not in a good spot. And I need your grace today. And I need your like reminder tomorrow that I can't stay in that for the next week. Like I've got to break out of that. And so I don't know. Yeah, just community with your feelings. It matters so much.
Yeah.
So good.
I love that.
I think for me, honestly, my relationship with the scripture really changed as I learned more about feelings. Even just speaking to our generation, like there's this generation that like maybe has even stopped reading scripture as much and have been caught up in their feelings, and they've separated the two almost and thought as if scripture doesn't have feelings in it and that it's just a book of instructions and it's old and not relevant to today's culture and how we're feeling right now in the world. But as I dug into the scripture, I just found like it was just quite the opposite. And I was honestly hesitant. I was like, okay, how are we going to write a Bible study about feelings? Because the Bible doesn't have feelings in it. And then as I was like looking at the Old Testament and reading all these like old stories, and then when I looked at the life of Jesus, I was like, oh my gosh, these stories and these people really do feel a lot like me, a lot like me. Like I was reading the story about Joseph's brothers who sold him into slavery. You've probably read that story before. But I saw it with a new lens. I was like, whoa, his brothers are super, super hurt. And like, that's what this like resentment really is. And like, I was like, I've been there before. And just story after story of like the Old Testament, like speaking to my life and really like revitalizing my relationship with the Word of God. And so, yeah, I do feel like it's funny, it's a natural sell for the study, but like if you need to get back to the Word, like it's a great study to like be like, okay, wait, maybe these two things, maybe my relationship with God and my relationship with the Bible and my emotions aren't so different. I think that they can be one. And it's a great place to go because there's a lot of truth that will cover all those feelings. So, yeah.
I love that. We're going to link to everything everything having to do with you guys, but especially the Bible study and the devotional in our show notes. So you guys can all find it there. But guys, I'm just so grateful for you. And I love that you wrote this. And our feelings really are such a hard, tricky thing to navigate. But I love that you guys have created this tool and that you guys get to be the people who create the tool that you're looking for. I just love you both so much. And I'm so happy to be I'm just sitting on the sidelines of your lives and careers and ministry. And I have the hugest set of pom-poms cheering for you. So I'm just really glad I get to be your friend.
Love you. I wasn't expecting you to say the pom-pom thing, and that got me. I love it. Me too. So good.
Things are coming on, guys.
Yes, thank you so much. We love you all.